Hello dear friends, viewers and trolls who's gonna be blocked. Today is a Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, and this is second part of the understanding snitching and backstabbing culture. It's gonna be short. I'm gonna touch a few subjects. First thing, it's gonna be the frequency. So I'm immediately gonna apologize because there is not much I can say about the frequency, but frequency is a theory which is keep on coming into my mind. And by the way, this little house there is connected very much with the frequency thing and my childhood, but I'm gonna come to that later on. So frequency is a theory which was coming into my mind lately after I started to develop this topic of the snitching and backstabbing culture. And basically it's saying that all creatures which exist in a certain frequency spectrum, and us TIs, we simply have different vibe than normies, and normies have different vibes than psychopaths. And psychopaths have much closer vibration to the Illuminati, but being a reptile is something completely different. So anything can be fit in these certain brackets. Let's say the psychopathic cluster, and reptiles and Illuminati, they also enter in that bracket. They have this sharp, strong, punchy vibe, and when you're around them you really feel like they're hitting you, and you feel this intrusive vibe. Normies, they have this dull vibe. They have this vibe of typically docile slave, which sometimes can get angry. So this is the vibe of the flying monkey, which when it's activated, when it's around its master, my metaphor for it, every psychopath has a chain to the Satan, and then he has a chains around the necks of his flying monkey. So when he's pulling these chains, then these dogs start to bark. And us, well, we have this now this could be taken out of the context, but we have this when we're calm, we have this very, very pleasant and inviting vibe. And everything I said shouldn't be mixed with the, this new age. I'm young, I'm tattooed, as James Harkin said in one of his emails when we were in contact. The Krishna tattooed hookers, not to be mixed with these young bodies, because when bodies are young, they can have lots of fuel, but then that fuel is typically wasted for something stupid. So how to sense the vibe, guys? You simply need to figure that out yourself. It simply needs awareness how things are in the practice. Um, well, now I'm really in my neighborhood where I was growing up when I was a kid. This is the part of the third May shipyard. Third May shipyard. This guardhouse, now it has cameras which are probably not working. This used to be manned when I was a kid, and I was living in that wooden barrack there. One very nice lady, which was babysitting me, lived in this house. I used to play there. We used to hang out in that room there, and she had the canaries. And I used to live here. I'll show you precisely the window here. Of course, everything's changed. 6 families lived in this house. Now only 2 families live, and they're changing it. The wooden pallets are being covered and everything. So because my mother was over vaccinating me, I developed asthma, and whenever I had an asthma attack, she would run to that guardhouse and use a phone to call the ambulance. So privileges of being a son of the narcissist. Of course, when that unholy vibe is in the biological body, you can expect little sabotages like being overvaxxed. But there is another thing I would like to add when I'm talking about these things. A few things I remembered, I forgot to say when I was talking about the snitching in the first part, and I want to add this. I'll go back to the parking lot. From time to time we used to play here. I remember there was lots of glass from broken beer bottles. Once I made my hands, scratched my hands, there was a blood. So I want to say this, three memories came into my mind. One from Tan Pagnanando, another one from my father, and a third memory regarding backstabbing what my mother done to one very beautiful woman. So first I'm gonna start with Tan Pagnanando. Tan Pagnanando is still monk. We met in Wat Pa Kachana Pisek Monastery in Thailand. One of the best people I ever met in my life. Really good in heart, very strict about observing Buddhist rites and rules, and but in a good sense. And he is Israeli. He is baby boomer generation, and he fought in many Israeli-Arab wars. And he told me many stories because we've been monks kuti to kuti. Kuti is monk dwelling, Buddhist monk, right? And so we talked a lot. And he told me this story when he was serving as an IDF member, as a soldier on occupied territory in 1960s during one of those many wars. He said they would one Palestinian will always rat other Palestinians, so they would cover with shawls, his head. They would put him in a car, and then he would point out they would line up Palestinians from the village, and then he would point at those who been the terrorists, right? And then he said, if a Palestinian wants to have a shop or restaurant, he absolutely must cooperate with the Israeli authorities. And he used many times, and he loved the term stinker. So this was the term for a rat. It comes from Yiddish. Yiddish is very similar to German. Stinker is somebody who stinks, right? Rats stink because they go to the sewage. So this is the thing I wanted to add to the story from before, and this is a story from my father. And basically he told me this story either in that dwelling where I just pointed you, or on a beach, or he was repeating it when I was 5 or 6. We've been really hanging out. Of course, obviously his working place was just like across the road, which is one way road, and he was serving Yugoslav People's Army in the early 1960s on a border between Yugoslavia and Austria as a graničar, as a border guard. This is now, of course, border between Slovenia and Austria. And this was the time when Yugoslavs couldn't leave the country. Country gonna end up open a little bit later on in 64. This is when first tourists gonna start arrive here. And first tourists, they've been also all coming here in 19th century, 20th century, but first tourists since communism took power in 1945. And then later on, people gonna start getting passports, and of course, many gonna flee the socialist paradise. But this was the time when Yugoslavia was, the hardcore communist shithole, so people couldn't live. So what people would do is they would risk their lives. They would go over the Julian Alps to the Austria, and he told me many stories. If you're interested, I could tell you some details which I remembered as a child. Maybe some of you want to hear about it. But one story was very interesting. He said, "Oh, we would get a telephone call from the restaurant, from the village. There was, of course, always one people's restaurant in a village." And the waitress who worked there, she would of course call them if she were to spot somebody who's not from the village. And I asked, as a kid, but how could she know who's who, right? And he would tell me, oh, she would recognize it by the outfit. People from that village and that part of Slovenia dress differently than people from elsewhere, and she would immediately notice, especially the shoes. And then he would go into length how people from this area. They would like go over the mountains in simple shoes, and their feet would be frozen. And he told me a story about one young guy. He was 20 years old. His feet were frozen, and he took him into Karaula, into the watchtower, where they had a wood oven, and he helped him out to take his shoes and everything. And that young guy was Croat, right? And then the Serbian officer came, because of course in Yugoslavia officers were typically Serbs. If they were like not Serbs, then they mean like Montenegrin. You understand? It's the same. And then he chased the poor kid out to the snow with his frozen feet. So these stories. So yeah, again, coming back to the the restaurant owner, the snitching, the backstabbing, and see how things are repeating, right? you know and of course I'm sure that Slovenian restaurant lady was super nice to the guy who would order like cup of hot tea, and she would maybe ask him where he is from, right? With a beautiful smile from ear to ear, right? But you know how it is with the customer service smiles. There is nothing behind. So like speaking from the experience. And a third story is about the backstabbing. The great deal of the backstabbing relies on envy. So narcissists and psychopaths, but they're more narcissists than psychopaths. When they feel envy, it's super easy for them to feel envy. They want to destroy either the source of the envy, or at least try to undermine the self-confidence of the person they're trying to destroy. So I was going to the school, Osnovna škola Rudolf Tomšić, or which is like primary school and junior high, 8 years. Rudolf Tomšić, which was the name of some partisan. And when communism ended in 1990, it changed name into Škurinje. So, and my mother was also working there, teaching biology and chemistry, and this was really unhappy thing for me, to be honest. So but to give you the background is as government changed, of course the whole management structure immediately changed. So the old communist lady who was running the school, she was sacked, and one alcoholic guy, Šimunić, who was teaching math and who was apparently hardcore nationalist, but he was really alcoholic and asshole. He got the seat with the help of my mother. And of course, my mother immediately changed from the communist into Croatian nationalist and hardcore Catholic. And one lady was working there, and this lady is important for the story. So she was ethnic Serb. She was typical brunette alpha female, tall, long legs, perfect shape, beautiful hair, beautiful face, beautiful smile. She was always super sweet to us kids. And I was like 14, then turning 15 at the uh, 8th grade. And I remember when she was passing by us, it was like jaws dropping, and just woo, really one of the most beautiful women I've seen in my life. However, my mother, she was opposite, right? She was short legs, big ass. That's what I inherited from her. And nobody was turning, when she was passing. It was like, ooh, more like that. And what happened is, in 1991, war started. So of course, uh, we got new scapegoats. Now they've been Serbs, and she was making a panel for you know she was making panel which should help kids to determine to which type of high school they should go after the junior high. And among articles, she put a very small article, like that big, like as my mother explained me. And first she told me that it was on Cyrillics, using Cyrillics letter. Later on she said no, it was not, it was Latinic letters, but it was article using Serbian language. That big thing on a big panel. My mother spotted it, immediately went to Šimunić, the guy, and he sacked her immediately on a place. She was fired. Later on, it took like, I really don't know, I think that happened in 2005 2006, somewhere along that line. She finally won. She went all the way to the Supreme Court, something like it. She won, and the Ministry of Education had to pay her all the lost salaries from 1991 till that year. So you know, envy obviously can be big issue if she is a good looking chick and the woodchuck Deutsch Schäferhund. So if she's good looking and you're not, at least you're gonna help to fire her. And what else I wanted to say something about this snitching and backstabbing. Um, right. So I'm just gonna finish with this vibe thing. When you meet somebody, I think very early on you can get the sense of idea with whom you're dealing with, and if you're dealing with somebody who's giving you a creepy vibe, and he's super nice and asking many questions, of course I call that bricks. It happened in my life so many times. Now I have a Graham and Simon from the Saraswati school from Bangkok. When I got hired there, they've been super nice to me. We had a cup of coffee. They asked me shitloads of questions. I felt like totally creepy vibe, but I wanted to be very nice to my new English colleagues. They've been ethnic English, and I told them, why you're not married and stuff like that. Later on, they of course turned it into a completely different story. So for the end, I can tell you one thing: use two things. Use your intuition and use your understanding of the system. So I'm just gonna repeat the understanding of the system. Four basic groups of people. You have the insiders, reptiles born in Illuminati. These are the people who sacrificed a lot, literally their children, and suffered a lot through the mind control programming. But they are typically managerial in decision-making roles, and they are the people who's gonna make our lives misery. Then you have the second layer group, like that guy who was burning Serbian houses during the war, and now he's, very privileged, right? He's getting subsidies from the government. He's the member of the Croatian Conservative Party, etc. And knows shitloads of people. Never has a problem with inspections, right? So you have the second layer, and this is like these are the flying monkeys of the decision making layer. So these are the people who can own companies because they're stinker, right? So you have the third layer of people. You have people who are not corrupt enough to be company owners, but they are usable enough to be obedient. So don't be offended. Pušači kuraca, the cocksuckers. So these are the, typical workers, and these are the obedient slaves, people who are, uh, perfectly okay to be fucked by boss every day, to be fucked by the landlord. So they never complain about anything, and and yeah, I have a bad vibe about this dog, but so far he was not acting aggressively, but he could. And third layer are the, of course, those people, in fourth layer us. And one other thing I really want to add. This is also from the experience. This is something I learned from Simon and Graham, and one other German guy. I forgot his name. Um, I'm sorry, guys. I must observe this dog. I can't relax, but I must continue with the story. So this is what I learned from them. People who work, and this was Illuminati run school. People who work in this kind of systems, and all big systems are run by them, and who've been working there like 10, 15 years. These people are veterans of many backstabbing stories, of many bombing stories, and this is something I experienced from this German guy was like we had like a 5 desks in a very small office. He would come, sit, and start talking shit about the director out of the blue, how stupid she is, and he told her in the face that she's stupid and shit like that. And I know the lady, one wrong smile and you fucking fired. So learn from the history, and notice that there are always people who are the agent provocateurs, and agent provocateur will always be very vocal. When he talks about the government, he will be extremely aggressive, but his main purpose is to basically unmask and figure out who's who, so establishment has easier time dealing with the dissidents. So you know, I learned many backstabbing tactics in uh, in that story, in that school there, because it was really creepy place. And guy who was sitting right across my table, the Mark Bierman from San Francisco, uh, he admitted that he is a born in Illuminati, and he told me a few things. But this is another story, and I was mentioning that before. So yeah, again, my flow of thoughts. I said many things, and I'm just gonna finish with this, guys. Thank you for staying so far. It again turned out to be a long update, but I managed to, pull some, fix some holes I didn't manage to do last time. Many memories from this street. Thank you and bye bye.